And welcome back to coverage here at Mythic Championship 4 from Barcelona, Spain. Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. Take a look at our main area here. This is where the players are that aren't in the feature match area. That is what a Mythic Championship looks like. Pretty big one here.
Yeah.
450-ish players. Take a look at our main feature match where we have Arnaud Hocquemiller versus Guillaume Wafo-Tapa. And you know, you and I, Paul, we noticed that shirt that he was wearing when he was in a feature match area earlier. Turns out it's a really special event for Guillaume. That was his first Pro Tour.
First Pro Tour, Tour Barcelona. Running back that shirt still looks like it's in pretty good shape after all these years.
It really does. Maybe he only busted out for special occasions like Mythic Championship Barcelona,
right,
or something. So let's get underway here. We have what could end up being quite a long match ahead of us, Paul, although I'm glad you're with me because this is kind of your specialty. We've got a control mirror.
Yeah, is this what maybe Riley would call a barn burner? Potentially?
No.
Is this not? That's not it.
The
okay.
opposite.
Oh,
the
opposite.
The barn is going to stand tall and firm for a very long time, and weather many storms, perhaps as well. What can we expect here from the matchup? This is blue-white control in the hands of Arnaud, and on the other side, Guillaume is on Esper Control. A little bit of black in there as well.
Well, in this specific matchup, a whole lot of nothing is what you're going to see early. I think the most important thing that both decks want to be doing is kind of just make sure they hit their land drops. You know, that is extremely important. Missing out on a land drop in the control matchup is very, very tough to come back from. Now, one thing for Guillaume is he's playing more instants in his deck. Now, Arnaud has Narset, Parter Veils in the main.
How about Teferi?
Also, Teferi.
On the stack right now.
Oh, shoot. So I didn't think anything was going to resolve over the first few turns, so I just assumed.
I don't know if Guillaume has a way to deal with it, but the fact that little Teferi here, Teferi Time Raveler, could shut off all of any interaction at instant speed here from Guillaume has got to be a big deal.
Right, and Guillaume likely doesn't have anything, because if you have a counter in the control matchup, you're likely just going to slam it to get that Teferi off the battlefield. Now, Guillaume doesn't have a whole lot of answers here for that. He has one copy of Blast Zone in his main, so that might be one of the few ways to deal with it. And
wow, are we seeing a silver bullet hit the battlefield here for Arnaud?
Yeah, I mean, Arnaud only has a singular copy of that in his deck, but if you can jam it and resolve it, it's going to be really tough because it's going to shut off, you know, the logic knots, the Dovin's vetoes that are in Wafo-Tapa's deck.
Well, Guillaume is going to crack that polluted delta here in response. Perhaps he just has something that he'd like to fire off for mana efficiency's sake on Arnaud's turn, even if it doesn't happen to deal with Teferi. And
now this is going to put a little more pressure on Guillaume, force him to be a little bit more proactive. Yep.
And there you go. He's going to run out Snapcaster Mage in response just to have some way to put pressure on the loyalty count of Teferi.
Yeah, now, this Teferi makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Now, will he just return it?
He can.
But then he doesn't get to do the, well, this is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, he can choose to return it, and if Wafo-Tapa wants to run out the Snapcaster Mage, he's going to have to main phase it. So it's actually not a horrible play here. Minus it, draw the card. If Guillaume just runs out Snapcaster Mage, I mean, he's not really going to be getting any value out of it because even if Guillaume plays a one-mana spell next turn, he's still not going to be able to have the mana to play the one-mana spell, play Snapcaster, and flash it back. So bouncing makes a lot of sense. You choose to bounce the Snapcaster Mage. Guillaume is forced to put something onto the battlefield. If he doesn't, Arnaud can then tick up the Teferi, and he's got Jace the Mind Sculptor in hand, which will safely resolve.
That's what I was thinking. You know, don't you just put your entire game plan around that? If you just get to slam Jace, you know, unimpeded next turn, you have to be in such good shape.
Wow, and this is one of those matchups where, you know, I thought it was going to be one of those grindy matchups. We've seen control matchups in Modern where the game ones, because neither player really has access to enough ways to win the game, takes a long, long time. We've seen 30 or 40-minute game ones in this matchup. But, I mean, being more proactive here, having those Planeswalkers, those powerful 3-mana Planeswalkers from War of the Spark can really swing this because, you know, Arnaud can really kind of snowball the game with this Teferi, playing turn 3 Teferi, followed by turn 4 Jace, and not a whole lot Guillaume can do.
This is just the one of in the main deck here for Arnaud, so really worked out well for him to find this window, the earliest possible opportunity, plays it on turn 3 on the play, and sneaks it by Guillaume Wafo-Tapa, who, as you mentioned, is forced now just to get some type of board presence to run out Snapcaster Mage again for no value and during his main phase.
And look at Arnaud's hand. He's got Jace, Teferi, and Force of Negation. Just kind of has all the answers here. And one of the most important things, too, in this matchup is, both players are playing a bunch of removal spells for the aggressive matchups. You have cards like Path to Exile and Supreme Verdict, and it's important, really, to just draw as little of those cards as possible before you can board them out in games 2 and 3.
Land off the top of the library there for Arnaud, but it is a tap land. He thankfully has an untapped land. And again, running out Jace the Mind Sculptor seems pretty strong.
He's probably
here.
just going to bounce the Snapcaster Mage here.
Just send it packing once again. That's exactly what he does. Super awkward for Guillaume Wafo-Tapa. Just can't even keep a Snapcaster Mage on the battlefield.
Right.
And next turn it's going to be Fireworks for Arnaud as well.
Yeah, Guillaume's
and
like,
in fact,
this is
the
it.
game's
Look
over.
at this. Wow.
Unbelievable. Guillaume Wafo-Tapa says, I have no way out, and I'm going to save you the time, me the time, and yes, you, dear viewer, the time. And he's going to pack it in, and Arnaud could not be happier. I mean,
that is like the fastest win possible that you can imagine from. And the thing is, Guillaume is a control master. He has played some variation of blue-white control over the course of his 20 years of playing competitive Magic. He knows. He knew the writing was on the wall there.
Totally.
Slamming that turn 3 Teferi, followed by the Jace, the game was basically just over right there.
That's right. And, of course, Arnaud, fellow countryman of Guillaume Wafo-Tapa, is going to have a lot of respect for the Hall of Famer and know exactly what he's capable of. So he is going to say, oh, my God, thank goodness. I only have to win one of the next 2 against the Hall of Famer. All right, we're going to take a short commercial break after our game 1. When we come back, though, we'll finish up round number 8 here from Barcelona. Don't go anywhere.
Hey everybody, I've got Paulo here who has 13 top finishes under his belt and is going to crack this pack of Modern Horizons for us. Paulo, you like this format?
I do, yeah. I think it's fun. The drafting is interesting and the game plan is usually cool.
All right, so we're going to lay out these cards here so everybody can play along at home, kind of figure out what your first pick from this pack will be, and just tell us a little bit about why. All right, so what are you seeing as you're laying some of these cards out?
All right, so Answer Prayers is a very good card. I think it's the best white common. White decks are usually aggressive, have a bunch of creatures can trigger it. Not a card I'm looking to first pick, but I will be happy to play it.
All right, let's get a few more out on the table here. We've got a Goblin War Party, a Rhyme Tender, Stirring Address, not really interested in that. Spring Bloom Druid, pretty critical for a few strategies.
Yeah, I like the Druid because it enables a bunch of different things. It finds no mana, it finds splashes, it puts a land in the graveyard for the green-red card. So I think this is a pretty good first pick. It can go in many different directions.
All right, well, let's see what else we've got. We've got a Lava Dart, Windcaller, Aven, Mind Rake, no. Diabolic Edict, no. Choking Tethers, no. And now we're starting to get into some of our uncommons here. All right, what's it going to be? Force of Virtue. Okay, Paula, what do you like here?
Well, Force of Virtue is a very good card. I think this is a battle between card and color because I think white is... I don't like the white strategies. I like the green strategies a lot more. But I think Force of Virtue is enough of a better card that I'm willing to just take it and play what I perceive to be a worse archetype just to get to play with such a strong card.
For you, if you had your choice, what would be the color pair that you would most like to be in Modern Horizons draft?
I think the best decks are the very good blue-black decks, the ninja decks, but they don't come together very often, and they are kind of narrow because the blue cards aren't as good. So yeah, if I'm choosing my deck, it's gonna end up being a blue-black deck, but I really like black-red because I think both colors are very good, and green is good too. So I don't truly care as long as it's not white.
All right, well, we're taking a white card here though, right?
We are, because I think it's enough better than Springbloom Druid that it's a combat trick and also pumps your team, and white is go wide in this format, so it really fits what the deck's trying to do.
All right, here we go. Force of Virtue, pack 1, pick 1.
And welcome back to the booth here in Barcelona. We're here for Mythic Championship for Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Chion, and we're in the last round of day 1 here. This is round number 8. We're playing Modern. Big storyline coming in was Hogak. Everywhere, 21% of the field for Hogak, but at the top of the tables, no. We've got 4 technically undefeated players. Paul's a little reluctant to give the 6-0-1 the undefeated, but you know, we've got 2 control players here as well as Tron and not Hogak.
But looks like we got lots of Hogak.
Speaking of Hogak,
going on over here.
Here we go. Yeah. Matt Severa versus Pyotr Glukhovsky, and yeah, they're just gacking it up. Look at this. Triple Vengevine on the battlefield here for Glukhovsky. But it looks like he's on defense because there is a Hogak on the other side of the battlefield there for Severa, and Pyotr down to 5.
I am not even going to start to try to figure out what's happening right now.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting to have Canister. That's Glukhovsky's you know, streaming name and stuff. I wonder how big of an influence he was actually on this tournament. He sort of famously now put out a tweet that he had gone undefeated in a Magic Online event with Hogak post Bridge from Below ban, and was kind of like, maybe this is still good. And you know, I think that that kind of led to momentum leading up here to the Mythic Championship, and an unprecedented number of players are playing it.
Yeah, he went something like 12-0 in that event, and I think the really important part is, you know, I would guess that most of the top teams would have likely come to that conclusion as well, just from testing. But I think it also just kind of opened the eyes for maybe the players that are playing their event for the first time. They're like, oh, whoa, okay, so this deck is still legitimate, and I'm going to test it, play it, and realize, oh, wow, this deck is still one of the strongest decks in the format.
I will not be arguing with you on that one, by the way, Paul, given the current state of the board from both of our players. They have 3 lands each. I don't know exactly what turn it is, but you know, it's turn 3, turn 4, something like that. And they're each, you know, have over 20 power on the battlefield. So
yeah,
there you go.
Very curious to see how this is going to end up. I mean, Matt Severa does have a nice blocker for the Vengevine with that Hogak in play. Has his own copies of Vengevine, and you know, Eduardo Saez-Gillick did allude to how this mirror matchup plays out. It's you know, both players aren't really good at stopping each other from doing their thing. So, you know, eventually what you're going to see is both sides with a multitude of Vengevines and Hogaks in play, just trading, and then you also just see those creatures coming back time and time again. So, you know, I think Severa's list is nice in the sense that it does have more ways to kind of turbo mill. You do have the Hedron Crab along with the Altar of Dementia, which I think are cards that were specifically included to have, you know, more of an impact in the mirror.
You can see he has one each of those on the battlefield right now as well. Glukhovsky's going to go ahead and send in with the creatures that can't block anyway.
And by doing so, Matt Severa will block the smaller creatures here, the 2 ones with the Vengevine and the Hogak. Just curious to see what he chooses to do with the last creature. And it looks like he's just going to put the Crab in front of the Bloodghast.
Well, really protecting his life total here. So those guys die. Still a zombie on the battlefield thanks to Stitcher's Supplier. So if Glukhovsky wants, he can cast one or even both of those grave crawlers again out of the graveyard.
Yeah, we could see a situation where Severa's game plan could be to maybe just deck Glukhovsky.
Really?
Sacrifice Hogak,
yeah.
Cast Hogak.
Yeah.
I mean, with a big enough graveyard, you can pull that off.
Yeah, you want to do it in one shot.
Right.
But, you know, the damage is done. There's already 3 Vengevines. It's not like it's horrendous at this point. Cancel that order. 4 Vengevines on the battlefield now
all
for
of the
Glukhovsky.
Vengevines.
Yeah. All right, well, it looks like our main table is set to go. Let's head back up there. We don't want to waste any time because, again, even though Game 1 ended up going unusually quick, that doesn't always happen.
And you see
oh, you were right,
Severa
Paul.
asking how many cards left in your graveyard because Matt, you know, knows that this is kind of, I mean, a huge reason why to play Altar because of how the mirror plays out where the board just gets completely mucked up. And this is a legitimate way to win because, you know, your opponents are already kind of helping you in that process, playing Seder Wayfinders and filling up their graveyard.
See, one of the advantages here for Guillaume Wafo-Tapa to playing Esper rather than just straight up blue-white, he does get access to cards like Thoughtseize.
Yeah, Thoughtsei's very, very strong. But, you know, taking a look at both players' sideboards, they have a handful of cards to bring in, but I actually don't think they can actually sideboard out all of their removal. So you will see a handful of cards just because they don't have enough things to bring in out of the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, one of the things that does pop up occasionally is the end of the game can come down to Celestial Colonnade.
Yep.
Particularly from Arnaud's deck, and having a way to deal with that can be good. You know, Path to Exile on a few of those, and sometimes our win conditions actually dwindle to like Jace the Mind Sculptor Ultimate, or, you know, some pretty narrow case stuff.
Yeah, and you know, you talked about how Celestial Colonnade could be an important factor here in the matchup, and one of the main advantages of being just straight blue-white is that Arnaud is packing 4 copies of Field of Ruin in the main. Meanwhile, Guillaume, given that he's Esper, can't really afford to play that card in his deck.
And by the way, we see that right here. There is Celestial Colonnade from Wafo, as he is known.
Is his hand all land? I think Wafo has 5 lands in his hand.
Yeah, you are correct. Which normally you'd be pretty bummed about, but is probably okay, right? Unless Arnaud just tries to jam something.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he did game 1. And Arnaud also has 3 copies. He's got Monastery Mentors in his sideboard, so.
Oh, and one in his hand, Paul.
Oh, wow,
yeah,
okay.
Now it's not that turn yet, but that's a very short window. And if he just says, you know what, I'm going for it, things could get very ugly for Guillaume. And it's another land off the top of the library, Paul.
Yeah, now we're in a situation where Guillaume might just want to start playing out those fetch lands and start thinning out his deck. He doesn't need any more lands.
Here's an opt from Arnaud. He likes what he sees. What was that, a Snappy?
Snapcaster.
Yeah.
So given that he found Snapcaster Mage, now he doesn't really have to run out the Monastery Mentor, right? He can choose to represent some kind of counterspell and then end of turn just run out Snapcaster Mage into opt.
That gets him a little bit of pressure, gets him another card.
Yeah, and just being able to play at instant speed is extremely powerful. Because imagine the sequence where Arnaud chooses to run out the Monastery Mentor, and let's say Guillaume Wafo-Tapa has the Logic Knot, then untaps and jams something like a Jace the Mind Sculptor. All of a sudden, the advantage has swung hugely in favor of Wafo-Tapa.
There's land number 3 for Arnaud. And it looks like we're going to see him just pass the turn back. That's going to prompt Guillaume to crack Polluted Delta on end step. And like you said, Paul, you know, small edges, right? But he really just doesn't need to draw any more lands for the foreseeable future. So he's going to try to get as many of those out of his library as possible to even minimally increase the chance that he draws some action here. This next turn's really important. I mean, if he continues to brick, he will have done nothing for multiple turns that he kind of can get away with it. But at some point, he is going to be put to the test. So let's see what Guillaume draws here. A land. Wow, at least it was a blast zone, but still.
Yeah, at least it was a utility land, but even then, this is not exactly what he's looking for. And Arnaud is going to continue to pull ahead here. Now he's got Snapcaster Mage. He's going to be up a card because he will use a Snapcaster Mage to flash back one of those ops in his graveyard. And he just has a lot more action going on. I mean, we taking a look at his hand here. I mean, he's got the Mentor, also Path, and a Cryptic.
So Arnaud's going to run out the Snappy. And there's Opt getting flashed back. He's taking a look at his hand right now and figuring out whether he wants to keep that card with Opt or go one deeper. Yeah, looks like he's thinking about keeping it.
Yeah, curious what this card is. I wonder if it's a land.
I wonder if it's just a land. He does have an untapped land and a tapped land plus Cryptic in his hand. He's kind of got his bases covered at this point.
Oh, yeah, so he does have 2 lands in hand, so it's probably not a land.
Yeah.
Likely would bottom a land.
Oh, it was Narset.
Wow.
Okay. Well, this could be a big turn no matter what. Wow, there's Teferi as well. So Arnaud with options. That was big Teferi, though, so 5 mana. But he is going to play something here, right?
I don't think so. I think he's... I mean, if he has an untapped land...
Oh, he just wants to sit on Cryptic?
He might just want to sit on Cryptic.
Oh, no.
He looks like he's going
guy.
for it. And actually, Guillaume doesn't have Cryptic Command mana up right now. So that is one reason to just run out the Narset here. But
Arnaud's peeling the goods. And that's going to resolve. So there's Narset shutting down potential future shenanigans for Guillaume and generating advantage for Arnaud. Wow, this match has gone so well for Arnaud and so poorly for Guillaume.
Oh, yeah. And this is one of those things now that Guillaume's potentially at 5 mana next turn. Even if he plays a Teferi, if he chooses to draw a card, he won't be able to because of the Narset on the battlefield. If he chooses to minus on the Narset, the Teferi will simply just die to Snapcaster.
And so all he can do is just keep playing with the lands. Oh, man, he drew it, too.
Yeah. He
that
can
was
shoot
Teferi Hero of Dominaria off the top there for Guillaume Wafo-Tapa.
And it feels horrible to minus on Snapcaster. I mean, he could still just tick it up just to kind of keep that loyalty count high and untap 2 lands. So play Teferi, tick it up, not being able to draw that additional card, but still not going to be enough right now.
Man, it's got to be crazy to be in Arnaud's seat and being playing against, you know, one of the legends of French Magic.
But he looks extremely comfortable
He
playing
really
his deck.
does, yeah. I'm impressed.
He's also just run the I'm going to jam my thing, and if it works, then you're dead strategy, and it's so far
And
worked
against
out.
the guy who drew 9 lands.
Yeah. Turns out that's a decent strategy.
Pretty good.
So yeah, it looks like he did choose to tick up Teferi Hero of Dominaria here just to add some loyalty. Not able to draw the card. Also has the untap clause, so now he can choose to represent some 2 mana interactions, maybe negates or logic nuts. Dovin's Veto. And Arnaud's hand is just completely stacked here.
Wow, he just found another cryptic command, Paul. That's in addition to the one he already had in his hand.
I mean, just imagine how jealous Guillaume is.
Oh, no
He was
kidding.
Mr. Cryptic Command.
He was. You're my Mr. Cryptic Command, though, Paul. Sorry, Guillaume.
I mean, he was definitely the control player that I looked up to.
Yeah, we give
when I
him
started
teachings,
playing.
right? That's his thing,
Yeah.
right? Oh, yeah? He was one of your...
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, Luis and I mean, it was half joking, but because Guillaume was also kind of a new pro on the scene, but we were like, yeah, well, we should just probably copy Guillaume's control list and run with it. So I actually qualified for for U.S. Nationals by just playing Guillaume's. I mean, it was just called Wafo-Tapa Control.
Really?
Yeah, it was an Izzet control deck with Niv Mizzet, and yeah, I just straight up took his list, and it got me there.
Wow. That's cool. Okay, there's a little heat.
Yeah, but Narset is
Narset
just...
is so brutal. In fact, Jace is kind of a liability in that case.
Yes.
Although it did give him at least something to do.
Yeah, I mean, he does have that Blast Zone on 2.
Yeah.
So he can take it up, get it to 3, then sacrifice it to get that Narset off the battlefield.
He can colonnade here too, right? It's just kind of risky.
He can also Jace plus, target himself, at least help manipulate his draws a little bit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we know that Arnaud has multiple cryptic commands in hand.
So he's sacrificing Blast Zone here.
Yeah, it looks like he floated the mana with the untap clause, with the untap trigger on the stack for Teferi to represent Cryptic Command, even though he doesn't have it, and is now choosing to sacrifice Blast Zone to protect Teferi's loyalty here.
From Snappy.
Right.
Okay. Well, it looks like Arnaud says, you know what, I'm just going to use a Path to Exile here to turn this Snapcaster Mage that was going to die anyway into a land. Thank you very much.
Nice little ramp spell here.
Yeah, he just has so much action in his hand. Lands on the battlefield, especially ones that he doesn't have to play, are excellent.
Yeah, I mean, Arnaud's now in the position where if he does draw land number 7, he can actually play Monastery Mentor with Cryptic Command backup.
And that seems very difficult to beat if you're sitting in Guillaume's seat. This is all on Guillaume's end step, right? There's that island.
He also has the option of just playing a land and activating. Sorry, he doesn't need to play a land. He just needs to activate Celestial Colonnade and attack Teferi. But that's a pretty risky proposition. Guillaume Wafo-Tapa's got 4 cards in hand. Could have any number of things.
Oh, look at this. He's going to use his mana up right now. He's going to return Teferi to hand and draw a card.
I actually like this play because if Guillaume has something like a Cryptic Command, he might be forced to kind of use it here. And Arnaud just using his mana because he has so much action in his hand.
Yeah, he does. Also, it forces Guillaume into an awkward Cryptic Command where he can't even draw the extra card.
Right. What are you going to do? Counter it and bounce Narset?
Right, and that was and that was all theory anyway because Guillaume didn't have the Cryptic Command.
Right.
And Hocquemiller perhaps keen to that fact at this point, and we may see him just run out Monastery Mentor, leaving up Cryptic, and really just sort of wishing his countrymen good luck with that, because the combination of Narset plus now Monastery Mentor to apply massive pressure and quickly means that Guillaume just has nowhere to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game is going to be over pretty soon here. I mean, Guillaume needs to string together some really powerful cards. Something like, I don't know, Thoughtseize into trying to safely resolve one of his Planeswalkers.
Dovin's Veto is way too late here.
This does mean that he can maybe run out a Planeswalker with Dovin's Veto backup. However, Arnaud will still get the trigger from the Monastery Mentor, and then he probably will be able to run out a spell, and then Arnaud can play Teferi to trigger the Prowess, and then just have Planeswalkers in play with multiple tokens on the battlefield.
Hold on a second. There, that's better. You convinced me, Paul, I'll tell you that. This is for undefeated overnight at the Mythic Championship, by the way. Both players, of course, will be able to be proud of their record either way, but boy, that 8-0.
Yeah.
That is nice. Dinner tastes a little better for that 8-0 player than it does for the 7-1 losing on the last round. After all that thinking, it was land go for Wafo. Boy. You know, the crazy part is that Hocquemiller can run this back again, too. He has another Monastery Mentor. Now, is there any way that Guillaume would have Supreme Verdict or something post-board?
Yeah, definitely. If he expects, because many of the Azorius control decks play Monastery Mentors in their sideboard, usually 3. And you definitely expect that to be boarded in this matchup. So, you know, given that you already have so many dead cards already, I can totally see Guillaume choosing to keep some copies of Supreme Verdict in his deck. He's got 2, and I wouldn't be shocked if he chose to keep some of them in. I mean, he's got 3 copies of Kaya's Guile, which is a really nice tech card against specifically the Hogak decks. Doesn't do a whole lot here in this matchup. So imagine he boards those out instead of the Supreme Verdict. And Arnaud being very patient here, doesn't really need to add a whole lot to the board here. He's got that Cryptic Command in his hand. That was a reasonable draw. Even with the land, he's got Field of Ruin. So now he doesn't have to be concerned about Celestial Colonnade potentially eating one of the Planeswalkers or one of the creatures. Now Arnaud can safely attack with the creatures and not worry about Wafo-Tapa activating Celestial Colonnade and blocking. Or we can just have Teferi here.
Yeah, Teferi to trigger my Monastery Mentor. It's like Arnaud's piling on a bit here.
Yep.
And that is, in fact, going to do it. Arnaud Hocquemiller is undefeated here on day 1. Congratulations to him. That is not something that happens very often, even in a professional Magic player's career. And he is going to get a chance now not only to be undefeated, but to do so at the hands of one of the greatest French Magic players ever to live. It has to feel fantastic to sit in that seat.
Yeah, I mean, going into the last round, 7-0, playing against one of the best control players even of all time, you know, has got to be a bit nerve-wracking. But, you know, Arnaud just had some really strong draws, and Guillaume just, you know, kept the hand with a few too many lands. I mean, you know, you taking a look at how the decks match up against each other, I think it's pretty even. You know, there are advantages to playing black. You do have cards like Esper Charm and Thoughtseize. However, playing blue-white means you can also have access to multiple copies of Field of Ruin, so you never, ever have to worry about Celestial Colonnade.
Talked about Hogak a little bit ago, and this is Hogak on the back table here with Matti Kuisma from Finland playing Hogak on the right-hand side there. Across from him is Alvaro Fernandez Torres, who's on, interestingly, one of the few players on hardened scales in the field. Decided to go for ultimately a very fast, fairly consistent deck that you would think would have a decent matchup against Hogak, just given the fact that Hogak doesn't really interact with you.
Yeah.
You know, just a goldfish style deck. Now, Hogak can just go bigger.
Right.
You know, sometimes you do your thing and they're like, well, here's an 8/8, you know, you figure it out. But
yeah, but you know, one of the things you can do, especially if you're the hardened scales deck, is you don't have to really be too scared about piling on all the counters on Arcbound Ravager onto your Inkmoth Nexus, and you can just kind of go for a pretty quick lethal attack. But at the same time, the hardened scales. Yeah, at the same time, the hardened scales deck doesn't really interact as well. So you know, the Hogak deck, if it has a good draw, you know, puts an 8/8 Trampler into play along with some Vengevines, it's going to be pretty tough there as well.
I have a theory, Paul. I think winning the die roll.
Pretty important here.
Yeah.
Pretty important here.
Would be very desirable in this particular matchup. As we come into this match, though, this is game number 3. And how are things looking? Well, there's an Arcbound Ravager and a Walking Ballista.
No hardened scales.
But no hardened scales. Though I do see
Grafdigger's Cage,
a
it looks like.
Grafdigger's Cage, yeah.
So Grafdigger's Cage will prevent Vengevine, Gravecrawler, and Bloodghast from coming into play. So it is a reasonably effective card. Still doesn't stop Hogak, right? You
just cast it.
You can just cast it from your hand. It'll stop Hogaks in the graveyard, of course.
Yeah, that's something too, huh?
Yeah.
That matters.
Yeah, and it definitely makes sense to have this as the graveyard hate card of choice coming from the Hardened Scales deck, because you know it is an artifact. So at some point, if you do really need to get in for the final few points of damage, you can still just choose to sacrifice the Grafdigger's Cage.
Okay, there's Carrion Feeder now from Mati. And he's got a Gravecrawler to cast as well. So pretty pedestrian stuff here, at least in the first few turns.
Yeah, the Hogak deck fairly underwhelming when all it has in play are a bunch of 1-mana 1/1s facing up against Ravager and Walking Ballista.
Yeah, but Fernandez-Torres does need some way to go over the top here, right? You see some of these card slots going to cards like Grafdigger's Cage mean they're not, you know, things that are really powering it out, because so far it's kind of funny to look at, Paul, but you know, it's a 1/1, a 1/1, a 2/1, a 1/1, and a 1/1. Like there's Modern, right? Like watch out, bunch of 1/1s.
Yeah, so Maddie is probably looking to top deck something like a Hogak just to put a giant threat onto the battlefield. Meanwhile, Alvaro would be happy to find a number of different cards. I think Hardened Scales would be an ideal card to draw here, because if he does draw Hardened Scales, then he can start using that powerful interaction between Hardened Scales and Arcbound Ravager to start building a ton of counters onto the Ravager. And then at some point, he can pile all those counters onto the Walking Ballista and clear Maddie's board and just start piling in damage.
He's going to do it the slow way here. He's going to pay 4 mana just to add the 1 counter to Ballista, but you know, that does let him take out one of the creatures on the other side of the battlefield, and he can start to really kind of move forward with that plan.
And Alvaro's got some good protection here, because he not only has a Grafdigger's Cage in play, but also the Welding Jar. So if Maddie wants to find an answer for the Grafdigger's Cage, he needs to find 2 answers, not 1.
And look at this. He has Force of Vigor in his hand, and on end step, he's going to go for it. This is just going to take down one thing, though, again, because of that jar.
Yeah, but Force of Vigor was huge. So now what Alvaro wants to do probably is, it looks like he's valuing the Walking Ballista more and is going to sack the Welding Jar to save the Ballista and sacrifice the Grafdigger's Cage.
Wow.
However, this now unlocks those Faithless Lootings that Maddie has in the graveyard.
Yeah, I think Maddie's going to be pretty happy with this sequence.
And now Maddie can also start piling cards into his graveyard with the Carrion Feeder. He can sacrifice the Stitcher Supplier to try to see if he hits something. But it looks like Torres wants to basically try to find a way to end this game sooner rather than later, and maybe thinking that walking ballista is kind of his path to victory.
Draws his card for the turn. He's empty-handed otherwise, so it's just going to be faithless looting here for Mati. Oop. Not so fast.
Faithless looting makes a lot of sense here.
Okay, so he's going to flash that back out of the graveyard. And it looks like Alvaro is like, well, hold on a sec.
So now it does make sense. It's actually, it's tough because he might lose the ballista, but Torres might want to use 2 counters to get 2 of the goblins, sorry, not goblins, 2 of the zombies off the battlefield. If he does that, then Matty can't actually convoke out the Hogak because he needs 2 creatures in play to pay for the colored mana on Hogak and then delve the rest of the cards.
Yeah, so he's going to have to just sort of make a big move here with the Ravager, sacrificing all of his remaining artifacts and then the Ravager to put a bunch of counters on the Ballista and start shooting stuff down. So there's 1 damage on the stack on the Carrion Feeder plus a counter, and they're just going to exchange counters for board states here. And that was a forced issue there for Matty, but can he find a way to get going again?
Look at that heads-up play, and it's paying off because he milled a Hogak here, which he would have been able to cast had the Walking Ballista not killed off the other creatures.
And a rough one here. Matty looks like he's got Leyline of the Void.
Yeah, Leyline of the Void is actually pretty strong against Arcbound Ravager and the other the Arcbound Worker as well. Against
it blanks
the modular.
Okay.
Right. Looks like that's what he decided to bring in. Interesting though, because there's a lot of cards that you want to bring in, especially in any matchup. You kind of have to bring in 4 copies of some combination of Abrupt Decay and Nature's Claim. So the fact that you also try to fit in Leyline of the Void, it's tough because then you're definitely sacrificing something to bring those cards in.
All right, well, nothing on the board here for Mati, and he's just going to have to ship it back. And now the pressure's coming in, but this next few turns is going to decide the match.
Look at this, just natural, right? It's a 4-mana 4/3 haste, right?
Mati's just going to cast a Vengevine and pass a turn back. Is that the brick wall that he needed?
Well, if Torres finds an artifact, he can just play out the artifact, sack the artifact to the Ravager, then sack the Ravager, and then he can make a 5/5 Walking Ballista.
Which is starting to approach lethal. Oh, and he did. It's Hangerback Walker.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Now, does he want to take a little bit longer of a game plan here to generate more advantage, or is it time to go?
I think he wants to close out this game as quickly as possible. Oh, no, it looks like he's going to play it a little more patiently here.
He does get quite a bit more value.
Yeah, one important thing is to not let Matty get a second creature onto the battlefield, because if he does, then he can convoke out that Hogak in the graveyard. So if Matty does run out a creature here, you will see Alvaro sacrifice the Ravager to get the Walking Ballista to get that Vengevine off.
There's another Hogak going into the graveyard. But critically, that was a 1-drop in Hannah Gravecrawler.
And he chose not to play it.
He just didn't play it.
It looks like he's waiting to draw another creature here so that he can play multiple Gravecrawlers and then get that extra Vengevine that he has in the graveyard into play. Ooh, big draw.
Man, these are nice draws here for Torres. He finds another copy of Arcbound Ravager. That's the 3rd one we've seen this game. This is the point where I just figure he's got enough to do stuff, right? Like,
well, Matty is at 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this could be a affinity finish here for Alvaro.
So this is now where Alvaro needs to run the numbers. He can pay 1, tap, put a counter on Hangerback Walker. So that would be a 2/2. You can sacrifice that, then generate 2 more Thopters. So that'll be basically 3 sacrifice triggers. Sacking an Arcbound Ravager to one of your Ravagers gives you 2 additional counters because there's the +1/+1 that you put on the Ravager along with the modular. It looks like Torres has lots of experience here with the Ravager math.
He's actually going to just kill this Vengevine. Add a counter now to the hanger back.
And is this a lethal attack? So we have 2, 3, 4, 5. And then if he puts the modular counters on the Walking Ballista, that's a 6/6. Then he can sacrifice the Ballista for 12.
Wow, looks like he's found a victory here. Cool, calm, and collected. He worked his way through this problem.
And now he's going
to can simply say, yeah, you're doing it.
And you can at least guarantee that 6 points of damage will come in if Matty doesn't have a removal spell. Now the question is, does he go for it here or does he just wait? Looks like he wants to wait in case Matty did have something like a Fatal Push in hand.
Yeah, he's going to make him use up that mana on his turn by doing this on his upkeep before the draw step. And Alvaro Fernandez-Torres picks up the victory here. He was 6-1. By the way, local, he's Spanish. So, boom, 7-1 overnight. Must be nice to be in your own time zone, huh?
Yeah.
Matti from Finland, once again, was actually playing up here as well. So he was 5-2, and he's going to end the day at 5-3. So respectable day one, but not really how we wanted that last round to go.
Yeah, and really impressive play there. Just kind of recognizing that Walking Ballista was his path to victory. He's like, I know Grafdigger's Cage is my sideboard card that I brought in for this matchup, but he was thinking, look, the way I win this game is by piling on a bunch of counters onto Walking Ballista. If I can get your board clear of those X1s, then you'll never be able to actually cast a Hogak.
Right.
And I can also continue to provide pressure on top of that. So, Fernandez really kind of aware of how this matchup plays out and what the important cards were, and it paid off right there.
Yeah, really smart stuff from him. And that is going to do it for our live coverage here from the feature match area. We do have the end of day shenanigans at the booth. First, we're going to take a short commercial break. We'll see you after that.
Hey everybody, Ben White's here, and we're going to crack this pack of Modern Horizons. Take a hold of that and open it for us. And while you're doing that, I'm going to ask you, for you, if you're sitting down first draft of the morning, what are you most hoping to open out of anything in this format?
I love Sling Gang Lieutenant. I mean, I could probably pick a rare or a mythic rare, but I think that's my favorite uncommon. Just goes in my favorite archetypes.
It's one of those mythic uncommons, I think, as well. It's just so strong.
Yeah, just the ability to turn a race basically single-handedly is just unparalleled for that card.
So we've opened Waterlogged Grove as our rare here in this pack, so we've got a land. But for you, looking through this, what are you thinking for your first pick?
For me, I think the best cards are going to be the removal spells, so Settle Beyond Reality and Defile are my favorites. I think this is kind of a weak pack overall. I mean, Good Fortune Unicorn is good if you're green-white, but it's like a gold card, and it's not quite good enough to justify jumping into 2 colors, I think. So for me, I think I'm in for Defile.
So why are you taking Defile over something like Settle Beyond Reality?
The format's pretty aggressive. It's very fast. There's a lot of low toughness, cheap creatures that are important to kill, so like Changeling Outcast, and Defile just trades with those cards at a very efficient rate. I think the cheaper mana cost card is really important.
For you too, is black a consideration over a color like white, taking first pick?
It is a little awkward because Defile requires more a heavier commitment, right? Because you just need a lot of swamps in your deck for Defile to really reach its full potential. Whereas Settle from Beyond Reality, you can play it in a green-black deck and just splash it. But I just think that I already like the color black in this limited format, and like I said, just the tempo advantage outweighs the fact that Settle Beyond Reality goes in more decks.
All right, so hopefully Good Fortune will be with us. Even though we're not taking the Unicorn, we're taking Defile here in this Pack 1 Pick 1.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the news desk. Rich alongside Maria and Eduardo. We've made it just about to the end of day one. Eduardo, your thoughts on the day?
It was a very technical, long day. No, but even then, watching both formats, both limited and modern, very technically demanding. A misstep can often just take you out of a game and potentially out of contention. So players are quite exhausted. There were a lot of complicated combat scenarios that I saw out of the field, and you could feel the tension in the gameplay.
Do you feel like the environment here, it is a very warm room, but beyond that, do you feel that constant technical grind is going to play a part in the destination of this title ultimately.
It might. Stamina is potentially going to play a role. Like, how do you handle like long tournaments and make sure you conserve energy, that you don't go like, oh no, I didn't mean, oh no, no, and then you die. It's important to maintain focus and clarity throughout the tournament.
Right, and right now, what are we, 8:30 on a Friday night? There's another 11.5-hour day.
That's right.
Before you then get into the elimination rounds, potentially. Yep. It's a big ask.
Well, Tim Willoughby is down on the floor talking to Bernardo Santos here at MSA4.
We have exactly 2 players in the room who have undefeated records. One of them is stood right next to me right now. Bernardo Santos, 7 wins, just a single draw. And my first question is, where did that draw come from?
So it was actually on the very first round in Limited. I had a really long game, really cool game. My opponent played Reap from the Past, like returning 6 cards from his graveyard. He cast the Dead of Winter card. It was a super grindy game. I thought if I had a little more time, maybe I could have won it. But it was a really cool game, so that was my draw.
We don't mind having a draw every now and again if the games are cool, but that, I guess, did mean that when it came to Constructed, and spoiler alert, you are playing one of the Hogak decks in the room,
yeah.
You had Hogak in the draw bracket. So normally in the draw bracket, when you're playing Constructed, that's where the matches are, with maybe the decks that are a little bit slower, a little bit more deliberate. Right. Is that just like perfect food for Hogak?
Actually, the games I played a mirror match, 2 Izzet Phoenix, a Tron. So it wasn't like the traditional blue-white control decks or Esper Control decks. So I guess it didn't affect that much. But I actually think it's not that good for Hogak, because those are some of the matchups maybe I want to avoid. So I hope I don't play against Control.
All right, so if some of those matches are the ones that you're hoping to avoid, like which are the matchups that you've really felt in command of, and have there been any key cards for you in your particular Hogak list that you felt have just performed super well?
Well, a lot of the cards are already well known by now, but one card that not everybody's playing maybe is City Wayfinder, and I feel it's just like a second Stitcher supplier. And the land is also super relevant in a lot of situations for flashback your lootings or for returning your blood guys. Just have a lot more resources. I think the card is very good, and it will overperform for me. Just letting me play Hogak turn 2 so consistently, like.
This is the word that we're hearing all the time from the Hogak players at the top tables. The deck feels super consistent now. Maybe in some respects, with Bridge from Below, it was more explosive but a little less consistent. And now that we've got the Seitai Wayfinder in the mix, it's doing fantastic work. Now, I know that you will want to get a good night's sleep. You've got a tough draft ahead of you tomorrow. How do you feel about sitting down at the very top table for some more Modern Horizons draft?
I'm just going to do my best and I hope it goes well, right? It's all you can do.
We can ask for little more than the best, so good luck to you for tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Here from Mythic Championship number 4.
Thanks so much, Tim. And, you know, we're not only competing for ourselves at this tournament. Of course, it is the culmination of our team series. And, Rich, you've got some updates.
Yeah, so coming into this round, it's just such a grind. And I think this speaks to what you're talking about, Eduardo, with this constant technical effort and just the high-level play. It is really grinding down even the very top teams. No one has had an outstanding day one, not even close. Looking at how you saw, they're top of the standings coming in. But Dizani and Mengucci are out, 1 and 5. That was coming into the last round. Kelvin Chu had a win and in to get to 4 and 4. Don't know what happened with him there. They have 3 players safely through to day 2. Lishi Chan, but only at 4 and 3 coming into the last round. Gregor Kowalski, 5 and 2 coming in. Now, 6 and 2, that feels pretty good. And Javier Dominguez, now he is 6 and 2. His result was already in. So, not great. But if you had a pair of 6 and 2s, you would feel that was a good day's work, Eduardo.
Yeah, and Javier is still showing dominance with that Izzet Phoenix deck. He top-8'd in London. I got to cast with him in Florence, winning the tournament, and he 5-0's Modern. Because he 1-2'd the draft. I told you, that was the thing this morning, right? Like, what do you do at 1-2? You relax, reflect, and then refocus and get there. And he 5-0's.
Yeah, so
wow.
So that was team in first. Channel Fireball were in second. again, just not a great day. Josh Utter-Leighton 2-5, Ben Stark 2-5. Pallavi de Damarosa played this last round to get into day 2, 3 and 4 coming in. And although they have 3 players advancing, going into the last round, Martin User, Mike Sigrist, and Luis Scott Vargas, all at 4 and 3. Now, what are the chances that you would go through 7 rounds and not a single one of Fireball better than 4 and 3? I mean, it's... And again, but they're all like that. All the top teams are, we've lost 2, we're stuck somewhere in the middle. It's just really tough out there.
Yeah, hard day for a lot of players out there in the field. But Tim Willoughby now down there with one of them who's feeling pretty good, Martin Mueller.
I sure am, Maria. Martin Mueller feeling pretty ecstatic, I would guess. I mean, you had a great draft in the morning. We got a chance to speak a little bit about how that went. Then we came on to Modern. Talk us through some of the highlights for you as you were playing your Hogak deck to an XM1 finish.
There was definitely a lot of explosive turns, that's for sure. I'm not sure if I can recall like the most memorable match I've had. Like there's definitely been a lot of close ones. I won a game against Petra where he was on blue-white, where I basically just killed him with the 1-1s and never did anything.
I mean, sometimes you just got to work with what you got, right? Occasionally they've got the hate and you just have to do it the old-fashioned way. But, I mean, one game that you let me know about that sounds kind of wild, it relates back to the London Mulligan, and it was a game where you feel like if you had drawn Leyline in the Void, if you had drawn maybe an answer to an opponent's Leyline in the Void, you might have been in a worse spot than what you ended up with.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I was playing against Andrei Strasky, and he was playing the Dredge Hogak deck, where it's game 3, I'm on the play. I mulligan to 5 because the 2 other 7s were bad, and my hand contains, the best I can keep is Wayfinder, Stitches, Supplier, Hogak, 2 lands.
So that's an easy Hogak, but not a whole lot else.
It's so bad against Leyline, he kept 6, so if he has a Leyline, I'm basically just out of it. And if I had a leyline of my own or Nature's Claim, I would probably keep those instead of the explosive turn 2 Hogak. But because I didn't have the option, I just had to take the worst option. But he didn't have the leyline, so it actually worked out way better. And I just turn 2, Windsvine, Hogak, everything on turn 2. And it's pretty fun how that turned out.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in some respects, it's almost the story of how Hogaks worked for this tournament in total, that when Bridge from Below was a thing, you could kind of be super explosive, and now Hogak is going, maybe just being super consistent about getting that 8-8 is good enough, and the 8-8 working for you today. We'll get a chance to find out tomorrow whether or not it continues working for you. Martin Mueller currently 7-1 at Mythic Championship number 4.
Thank you very much to Tim and Martin Mueller there. Now, we asked a bunch of players the day before the event, what are you playing in Modern, and why have you done that, right? Is it just that you've played the deck forever, you're just locked in ever since the dawn of Modern, or are you all about the best deck right now? Are you about the metagame? Lots of different answers, lots of different perspectives on this new Modern. So we're going to check out a bunch of deck choices for you now.
You can probably take one guess of what deck I chose to play in this Modern event. Tron. I played it last time, it was great, and now there's Karn, the great creator, who's basically, you know, we're in Barcelona, he's like Gaudi. He's creating all these different amazing architectural wonders, you know, Ensnaring Bridge, Mycothin's Lattice, he can do it all. So the deck got that is a pretty nice pickup, and Blasting Zone's awesome. And just, I think I like a lot of my matchups. You know, I have a bunch of graveyard hate, so.
Hello.
All right, we're
here. No, we haven't left you. It's all right.
I was so shocked.
It's like, has it really? Did we just dream our way through end step? That was quick. My word. Welcome back to the news desk. Rich here with Maria and Eduardo. We're just waiting for a couple of outstanding results, then we will be into end step. We'll walk you through our card of the day, player of the day, match of the day, team of the day, and we'll show you the standings as we head into day 2. A reminder, if you are new to coverage, welcome along. Where have you been all day? 4 wins, 4 losses or better brings you back tomorrow. So we get rid of around about 35 to 40% of the field. 4 and 4 or better brings you back again. Eduardo, how many? This feels like a strange draft format to me in that perhaps more than many Pro Tours recently, Mythic Championships as they are now, that we're going to see you behave. We're going to see players perhaps having learnt the most from the first draft this weekend, because perhaps they haven't drafted 50 to 100 times in this format necessarily in the way that they frequently have for many Mythic Championships.
This one is a bit weird because Modern Horizons has been on Magic Online for a long time now. So the players that are used to drafting and enjoy drafting probably have done 50 to 100 drafts. But then some people came from like the Mythic Championship qualifiers, maybe aren't so comfortable in Limited, and have done maybe 1 or 2. So it's been a while since we have this wide a disparity in terms of Limited skill and test in terms of pure raw numbers.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of people, and it was so split. Some people said, you know, I've done so many drafts, I've been drafting it all the time. And other people said, well, I did 2 at a Grand Prix. Thankfully, I made day 2, so that was my testing. Do you think that the preparation people have put in for this is really paying off?
I think so. And one of the payoffs you could have had is if you know your Modern deck already like a month in advance, and you're like, I know how this plays out. I can focus on Limited. The top teams are kind of splitting their time usually between, oh, we have to discover the format and we have to discover the Limited format. Like basically having to divide between Constructed and Limited. But if you're coming from Constructed and you've played one deck all the time, if you're like, I'm going to play Blue-White Control, it doesn't matter what's happening, I'll just tweak a little bit like a week before I understand the metagame. Then you can draft for a month, get up to speed, and take over the tournament as a result.
Now, does that even work with the control decks? Because the message I get on the control is that you sort of have to wait until all the as much as possible, all the information is in, you understand the format, and then you go, this week's Esper Control list looks like this. And actually, like playing 3 weeks ago with Esper Control doesn't necessarily do a lot for Esper Control this week.
Yeah, especially if you're used to playing the archetype. If it's brand new to you, that's obviously you have to get up to speed. But if you're used to playing control decks like for the longest time, then all you need is like a few tweaks. Like, oh, you know what? This graveyard decks, I'm going to add 1 more surgical extraction. That's going to be the little knob that I need to take it down.
Just little
dial it in.
Dial in. Okay. Well, more deck choices now. I don't think the stream's about to end this time. Let's find out.
I've chosen to play humans. The reason is not because it won the last Mythic Championship that was modern. The reason is the Modern Horizons lands that sacrifice allow you now to mitigate mana flood, which was always the deck's biggest problem. Plus, they give you extra white sources, so now you can cast sweet sideboard cards like Rest in Peace and Path to Exile.
I'm playing Hogak because it routinely gets starts that are just not reasonable in Magic. I would have preferred to play a deck with like a plan B or like less one-dimensional method of attack, but it's just so fast, and when you come in under most of the hate cards, it's really hard not to play it.
I'm playing Hogak in this tournament. It's kind of the deck of the tournament, and I think it's just broken. I think the deck is really, really good. I think despite the fact everyone knows about it, it's still very good.
So this weekend I decided to register Eldrazi Tron. So I think the deck it's pretty good, and I just had some tools to be able to fight Hogak and Phoenix like better. So I'm playing some Anti-Nirag Bridge main deck, like 3 main deck. 1 is a side for the 4 corn, and I hope I can lock my opponents with these tools. Yeah.